Welcome back to Next Stage Podcast. We got a live virtual performance here featuring Jeff Moro, also known as Reptar the Man. He's coming to us from his studio, streaming over, and he's going to do a few tunes for you guys, and then we're going to get some interview and figure out what's behind it all. So we got Reptar the Man, a.k.a. Jeff Moro, beginning now.
With your mind. This is digital something. I was very joyful. I think 6 million minutes. Or have some error. I know my world, it seems so small. Not what I thought you were at all.
Nice, man. That was some good stuff. I appreciate you doing this whole setup for us. I mean, you got quite a lot going on there. And I mean, it's pretty impressive that you can do all that and play the way that you do while, running all those different instruments and tracks and stuff. So it's very impressive to see that done live. And yeah, man, that was awesome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, well, we can hear you fine.
That felt, I whatever. I messed up there in the.
Oh, you're not supposed to tell people that. Can you inch a little closer to that mic? You're just a little quiet on this end.
That's better.
Oh yeah, that's a lot better. Nice
All
and
right.
intimate and creepy.
All
So,
right.
you first.
Hi, my name is Jeff, I guess, aka Reptar the Man. That first tune was called "It's Not Me," and that second tune was called "All But Dead." So I said I was gonna give a little rundown on what the first tune was about. I guess I'll just give a little rundown on what they're both about. First one is about dealing with a range of emotions and exposing yourself to whatever scares you or makes you depressed so that you can work your way through whatever emotion you're feeling. Hence the samples of that dude at the TED Talk. I took those samples from a TED Talk on YouTube. And then the second half of it is the Dalai Lama talking about people just generally having issues, but how peace of mind comes from you. Really, really all of your choices and reactions and responses to situations are really in your own hands. But it's really just what you've been through and how you deal with those emotions. And then,
And is that like a common theme that you deal with in your songs in general? That first one just kind of you chose to write that, or the music made you feel that way?
It's generally, I mean, I want to say a lot of my songs are really personal. I really talk to myself a lot in my songs, and I like to have double entendres in my songs. I like to leave the meaning open to interpretation so that whoever's listening, they can come up with whatever the hell they want to come up with. And I think that's just the nice part about music in general. I mean, for me, I feel like lyrics are definitely my weakest point, and it's definitely something that I'm still working on. But yeah, I mean, I'd say a common theme is really a lot of introspective, personal growth kind of things. And some of my songs, I mean, I'm starting to, I don't want to say stray away from it, but some of my songs, and one of the songs you'll hear later, has a little bit more concrete, more relatable meaning to it. And then the second one, All But Dead, I started writing right at the beginning of quarantine because I was dealing with some stuff and I needed to, between school shutting down and just having to cut some people out of my life that were not serving me anymore. That song is about ditching the ego and ditching who you have always perceived yourself to be and how that character kind of comes back. So I say before the first chorus, I'll let you do this one last time. Right. And then that's like me saying to myself, all right, I'll do this one more time and then we'll see what happens. And then, into the last chorus, I say, now this is the last time. And that's like the character saying, all right, nope, this isn't happening anymore. I'm getting rid of that. So
it sounds like you do have some pretty,
that's those two in a nutshell.
Okay. It sounds like you have some pretty like deep introspective meanings in your lyrics, but the music is very like kind of vibrant and like upbeat and fun sounding. So it's like, I like that dynamic that you have deeper, more, I guess introspective would be the word, but lyrics that are heavier than the music seems. It's kind of wrapped in this nice pop sheen aesthetic to it that doesn't seem like you'd be getting those kind of messages, but digging deeper into the lyrics, just you telling me this at least, makes it seem like you have more of a direct message going through that. Is that how you mean to make your music, or just that's an accident?
Well, a lot of the time the music comes first. I don't think I've ever once written a song with the lyrics come first. Usually, at least with that second one, All But Dead, I specifically remember just starting with that melody, that synth, that like video gamey kind of synth in the beginning. Ba, 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 ba. So I was having a really hard time trying to come up with some sort of melody, and I wanted to keep that melody in the background the whole time in one way, except for the bridge. The bridge, it just goes away. But that melody, I kind of felt like that needed to be there the whole time, just so it kind of stuck in people's heads. And then I was like, I need a hook. So then I took that melody note, that melody, I put it in the vocal line, and I just doubled each note in the melody. Ba, 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 ba. It's a little different, but really I just took that melody and then I harmonized it differently, and I like to call that song like a love affair between like Snarky Puppy, Thundercat, Jacob Collier, and Lewis Cole, and me just like making one stupid song. So
yeah, so are those all like influences on what you do, or just what you thought this song reminded you of?
That one particularly, I was like, man, this track needs a lot of character. How can I convey character instead of it just being like, oh, verse, chorus, blah, blah, blah. Because I mean, with the exception of the bridge, it is the same 4 chords the whole time. I'm just reharmonizing the chords with different bass notes. So when I figured that out, I was like, okay, there's your Thundercat influence, because he's all quirky and wacky. And then at the time, well, not at the time, but I was like, okay, Thundercat, Lewis Cole with that video gamey kind of synth, and then the Jacob Collier kind of vocal sound and harmony influence, and then that Snarky Puppy funk kind of thing happening. I needed a way to syncopate it and add that character so that the character comes in with that riff that you hear on the verses. Because it's funky and it lays in weird places, not in places that you would necessarily feel it.
Yeah, from like the first time listening for me, this is the first time I've heard it. It reminded me of, it made me think of some current, pop music and trends and things like that. But I was hearing things that reminded me of like 80s era King Crimson, some of the Robert Fripp stylings in there, and you were kind of doing chord solos on the bass. So it was cool to hear those two worlds mixing together in a song. It's like definitely has modern mainstream appeal and is packaged that way, but there's cooler things going on in there that's more of a musical composition, and you're kind of showing some different sides of playing than people I think would get normally in today's modern music.
Thank you. Yeah. I definitely needed to change my approach to music in general. I used to lead a 9-piece band, and then I was like, nah, I can't do that anymore. That's too many people. And then when I pulled the plug on that, I started a duo project with a drummer in Mo Music, who you've done a Next Stage episode with before. And then now finally it's down to just me, and I'm putting a culmination of everything I've learned about music and music production and live sound and stuff like that into one project.
What was it that like drove you to make that decision to whittle it down to just you? I mean, obviously there's, you're using multiple instruments while you're playing, and there's, backing tracks, but it's you making it all. Like, what made you want to go that route and not have to be involved with 9 people or whatever it was?
Well, this I guess persona, artist name, whatever. I started writing music like this back in like 2016, and I was just doing it just because, hey, I want to like write weird R&B while also leading a 9-piece band. And I always knew eventually that it would happen. Just it becoming just me, but I think I just needed to let it happen. And this was like the opportune time to do so. 'Cause I'm at a point in my life where I'm just really trying to let go of old bad habits, like thought patterns and behavior patterns. And I think this was definitely the time to do it during quarantine, while everything, literally the world just stopped. So I just felt like, it was definitely time to invest more in myself, both musically and just personally. I feel like with a lot of musicians are way too hard on themselves. And I get it. It sucks being a musician sometimes, but also like it's great at the same time. So it's really just like trying to look within and figuring out when is the right time to do these kinds of things.
What do you mean you say musicians are really hard on themselves? Like, what do you think drives that dynamic? Or maybe from your own personal take, and not necessarily speaking for everyone, or you might have seen general trends with other musicians. Like, why do you think that is?
I mean, I maybe being hard on themselves is a bit much. I mean, the experiences that I've had, being somebody who spent 4 or 5 years in a music conservatory, that environment can get a little toxic after a while. You're constantly being judged, you're constantly being compared to, you're being put on a pedestal, you're being taken off the pedestal all of a sudden because someone's quote unquote better than you, So, and then there's just like, I understand music is at where it's at. It's always progressing. And there is some true artistry out there that we don't hear about. But I mean, sometimes people do get hard on themselves. Like people just say, man, I sucked, or I'm not really happy with that performance or whatever. I mean, me, like right at the beginning of this, I messed up. But I mean, at the end of the day, does it really matter? I mean, I'm hard on myself sometimes because it keeps me in check, but also, developing this better relationship with myself. It's, oh, hey, I messed up. Okay.
Yeah, having that like forgiveness towards yourself if it's not perfect, because nothing is all the time. But you mentioned something in there that I maybe you can expand upon. You were talking about how music is the way it is, and that can be frustrating, but you understand that it always has to progress, and maybe there's some artistry that we're not hearing. Do you think that the mainstream like pop world tends to crush out more creative artistry? And with what you're doing, it seems like you're bridging that gap between putting more intellectual or complicated musical things in with a like kind of modern pop aesthetic. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I love modern pop music. I mean, I'm not one to say, or not anymore. I'm not one to say that any kind of music sucks, because you can't really compare any kind of music or any kind of art to each other. Like what is that? What does it mean? At the end of the day, it's up to the person experiencing that art. And like pop music, does it all sound the same? I think it's gotten better. I don't think it sounds as much of the same. And I think a lot of that has to do with production. Just like the production tools that producers are using. Like I'm up here using a freaking UFO space command center over here and performing live over a computer. I'm in a basement, So I think that the creative possibilities nowadays are crazy endless, but I don't think it really has anything to do with the artists writing the music. I think it has to do more so with the consumer mentality, the consumer society that we live in, which, okay, I get it. It's cool. Like people, they want something to latch onto. So they're going to open up Spotify and they're going to see today's hits, today's best songs ever. And because we're so busy comparing ourselves and comparing things to each other, like, yeah, the average person who didn't go to music school is going to be like, Yeah. All right. I guess I'll listen to that or whatever. I mean, I know none of you, you're a musician. You didn't go to music school. I'm not saying that, anything like that. You have a good taste in music or your own taste in music. So you'll obviously scroll past all of that stuff. If you even use Spotify, good for you if you don't. But I just feel like there's this, even with what I'm exposed to being a public school music teacher, it's like, yo, mister, did you hear that Travis Scott track? Or, yo, mister, did you hear this new whatever? I'm like, no, I didn't. Because people just assume that because you're a musician, you know everything about music or you've heard everything. It's like, no, I haven't heard everything. You're an accountant. Do you know every math problem? Like it's the same for everybody. And I always use that comparison because I just think it's a toxic thing that everybody's always comparing and everybody's always like so quick to rush. Like, this is the best, this is the best, this is the best. And I recently found this really awesome album by this hip hop collective called Spillage Village. My favorite track on the record is called this track End of Days. And there's this really profound lyric at the end. And it gives me the chills because right when he finishes saying it, there's this huge rush of reverb comes over his vocals. All the music cuts out and it's this really dramatic thing. And what he says is, he says something along the lines of, perfection is the goal these days, but why can't I just have something pure? And that's so profound. We become such a results oriented society that it's like, let's just relax.
Yeah, that's a very big distinction that's drawn there between perfection and pure. We tend to, sometimes those are confounded as like synonyms. If something's pure, it's perfect. If it's perfect, it's pure. But that's not really what's going on. I mean, perfect doesn't really exist. And then what would you say pure is then? Like, what would you consider pure in terms of a expression or in music or, a performance?
Wow. Well, if I can it kind of goes with my approach to writing. Like I'll start writing something and I'll be feeling it right away. And then I'll hit a wall. And to me, that's just like a sign that's like, okay, I got to like put this away and let this happen organically. And sometimes my song, I've written a 3-horn chart for a 9-piece band with lyrics and a whole meaning. I've done that in 4 hours before. And that could be considered pure, right? Like I wrote that entire song that I just talked about in my head on the way back from the Westcon practice rooms one night. I was like, this is going to happen here, blah, blah, and it just like, for whatever reason, something was just clicking with it and it just happened. But with that tune, All But Dead, it took me 3 to 4 months. So I think pure kind of fluctuates from place to place. I mean, this water's pretty pure. It's filtered twice. It's pretty, I mean, I that's a really hard question. But and even I think both of them, the meaning of perfection, like the perfect piece of music to me personally, every time I listen to Knights of Sidonia by Muse, I'm like, this is a perfect piece of music. This is an amazing song. But then like, I don't know, somebody else could be like, yo, this is horrible. So, I mean, it's this, what is pure? I don't know. Pure is a company that makes water filters, man. That's the only fact I can give you.
Yeah, maybe that's true. You're right. It is subjective, and the purity might be only within the person who's experiencing it. Like, does this speak to me? Is it resonating with me? And like, that would be pure to me then, but that might not be translatable to somebody else, So I think you're right. It is varying place to place. It's kind of like a spectrum, but it must be whatever speaks to the person who's, as you said, how can you judge music if it's speaking to everybody differently? How can you say this is crap or this is good if someone else has a different opinion? So maybe that's just it. It's the subjective experience and what someone's getting out of it.
Yeah. And one thing, I mean, that kind of, Jesse said something to me one time, actually. We were talking about, this was a while back. This was like when I first met Jesse. And we were talking about like jazz or jam bands or whatever. And he was like, yeah, to me, like jam bands or like jazz or whatever, music, like improvised music is music in its purest form. And I was like, yo, he's right. So like, I like to incorporate that kind of thing into my music too. Like, yeah, I got all this crazy stuff going around me. But you know, that one tune, but both the tunes, I was really improvising. You know, I had that one solo in that first track. And then the second tune, yeah, I have a set bass line in there, but sometimes I'm improvising. And that's just a culmination of rhythmic vocabulary and harmonic vocabulary that I've built up over the years that is now in the confines of my mind. You know, so pure maybe is just like, maybe it's improvisation based on things that you've experienced, you know, maybe pure, organic, like naturally I'm just kind of good at explaining things to people in a concrete way and like really breaking it down step by step. That may not be as pure or organic to other people, you know?
Yeah, so that is cool though that you are leaving spaces in your music to be able to improvise and to have that, you know, spontaneous expression, because I think maybe that was the core of what stood out to me is the juxtaposition of having what seems, you know, influenced by the modern pop trends, as I call it, post, because we had, you know, post rock, then post punk, then post grunge. Now there's post, and you know, we know who that refers to. But within that, you know, that's kind of like the surface level sheen, but that's not really, you know, what's going on completely in your music. And they're having those spots where you are improvising, you are, you know, playing from whatever knowledge you're drawing from. I think that makes it, I wouldn't say an improvement upon it, but it makes it creates a growth into a direction which I could see a lot of other people feeding off, because I think there are bands and musicians who want to be more expressive and maybe more nuanced in their music, and there's a feeling that you have to just do what is already popular to get through, and there's no room for that stuff. So maybe with what you're doing, you'll break down some of those, you know, boundaries, or maybe inspire people to do that, you know, to blend those worlds.
I hope so. We'll see what happens. I mean, I've kind of, I'm working towards detaching the, well, I think I've worked through the detaching fame and fortune portion of all this, you know, the whole music thing, like that question, how's the whole music thing going? Next time somebody asks me that, I'll give them the old smack across the face. But yeah, I mean, I think people, you know, kind of goes back to the consumer thing. Like people are just obsessed with money, and I get it. You need money to live, but people get hung up in it sometimes.
Yeah,
that has anything to do with what we were just talking about. Sometimes I just go off on tangents.
No worries, man. It's all good. So you got 2 more songs you wanted to do for us tonight?
Yeah, I got a couple more. Let me think what they are. Yeah. You want me to hit those?
Yeah, dude. So I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about the music and explain the process. I hadn't heard any of this stuff before, so it was new for me. I'd heard, you know, some of your previous projects, so it was very refreshing. I mean, I love the new direction. I think it shows a lot of potential and great growth. Like I'm truly excited about it. So I'm glad to be experiencing it for the first time, you know, in this format, because it's fresh and I don't have any preconceived notions about it. So yeah, I'm really happy that you did this and you're talking about what your process and how you've, you know, gone through changes personally and musically. It really, you know, opens up the it explains and opens up the discussion about, I guess, how music can evolve and grow and how individuals can progress through it. And I think it's a good indication of that perseverance attitude of, keeping going and, being open-minded to new things. I mean, I love that you're doing that. So
thank you.
I appreciate it.
So the first tune I'm going to play is a track called The Stars Aligned, and that can be whatever. I wrote it about getting ghosted and like being okay with it. And you'll hear that in the hook. And that one's pretty wacky. That one's really about the musical aspect of it is more so how can I really milk this melody, and you'll hear it throughout the whole track. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. How can I milk this one melody and really just stretch the arrangement out a bunch? And then the second tune, People Talk, that one is about people just, running their mouths and not really following up on things that they say they're going to do. And that's what I was talking about earlier. That one has a more like concrete, kind of relatable meaning to it. So trying to relate to people while also not giving up myself too much. And that one actually has a vocal sample in it in the beginning that I took from somewhere. I don't remember where I took it from. But that's also part of this artistic progress thing. Like, I never really knew how to sample until like May or June, or like really knew how to like do it. And now it's like, all I want to do is sample tracks. Like, all I want to do is like chop vocal samples or chop drum loops and make something cool out of it. So like, that's another thing too. People, and I don't mean to rant, but some people are like, man, whatever happened to like people actually playing instruments, or music is all done on computers now. It's like, well, there's still a human being behind the making of the song, and there's still an element of teamwork and all that. So I'm going to stop that rant right there, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to play.
All right, man, let's get to it. Let's see the next two tracks here. Coming from Reptar the Man, a.k.a. Jeff Moro. Live streaming from his studio, straight to you.
All right. Okay. So this one, again, is called The Stars Aligned. And we do this. Stars Aligned, take one.
My feelings been hurt, you gave me the dirt, gripped me with the skirt, trying to flirt now, We've seen it before, find the world, sweep me in, myself and now I'm standing on the ground, really trying not to fry it. Now I think it's plain to see you were never really good for me. You've been fucking up now, baby. I tried to shed some light now, baby. seem too crazy. The past few years I've been feeling lazy, and I don't want to call me maybe. The stars aligned and I feel fine, yeah. Got it bent, now my phone vibrating. I'm passed out, but my thoughts still lingering. Text you again, now I'm really chasing. It was last night, you got me singing. Now I think it's plain to see you were never really good for me. You've been fucking up now, baby. I tried to shed some light now, baby. I tried to play it cool now, baby. The stars aligned and I feel fine. You ain't really seem too crazy. The past few years I've been feeling lazy, and I don't want to call me maybe. The stars aligned and I feel fine. You've been fucking up now, baby. I tried to shed some light now, baby. I tried to play it cool now, baby. The stars aligned and I feel fine. You ain't really seem too crazy. The past few years I've been feeling lazy, and I don't want to call me maybe. The stars aligned and I feel fine. You've been fucking up now, baby. I tried to shed some light now, baby. I tried to play it cool now, baby. The stars aligned and I feel fine. You ain't really seem too crazy. The past few years I've been feeling lazy, and I don't want to call me maybe. The stars aligned and I feel fine. 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 The stars aligned and I feel fine.
Was that one I still have the vocal effect on my vocals? Do I sound like the devil, or do I
sound like a munchkin? And then I said, oh my gosh, you don't even want to know what I saw at the office today. Oh my gosh! Did you hear about Roberta from accounting and her husband has an affair with Jeannie over by the cul-de-sac?
And that's it for that bit. So this next one. So I gotta shout out my homie, whose real name shall not be named, but he goes by the surname of Greg Rivers. So he specifically wanted me to send this podcast to him. So when I send this podcast episode to him, I'm gonna say right to his face on this episode, I'm shouting you out right now because you helped me with this track. So thank you. And this will be my last one. It's called People Talk, and I need to put my bass down for this one because I'm not actually playing the bass on this. I am playing the bass on the recording, but I'm not physically playing the bass live. So you know what? I just gotta take this off real quick. So there's a verse in here that I kind of rap and kind of sing, and just assume that on the recording, that's where Greg Rivers is rapping. Plug, all these songs are on Spotify, that's it. False start, although that sounded really cool. I forgot to clear something. Here we go.
You told me all of these things that
Scott, Jesse, Christian.